Hey there, and welcome back to ClearPath Conversations. I'm Mark Bernardin. In the last episode, we talked about the art of saying no as a CSM. We covered how to set boundaries without damaging trust, how to push back on unrealistic expectations, and how to protect your time while still delivering a value. Because the truth is, you can't be everything to everyone. And trying to do that is the fastest path to burnout. Today, we're taking a different angle. We're talking about the internal playbook that you wish you had when you started. The onboarding deck that actually prepared new hires. The runbooks that documented how things actually work. The health scorecards that gave you early warning signs, the risk logs that tracked every account issue before it became a fire drill. These are the documents that separate functional CS teams from chaotic ones, and yet most CSMs never get them. They inherit a CRM with outdated data, a shared drive full of orphan templates, and maybe a Slack channel where institutional knowledge goes to die. So you build it yourself because no one else will. And that's what we're digging into today. Not theory, not best practices from some consultant who's never managed an account, just the tactical, unglamorous work of building the internal structure that makes customer success actually scalable. Let me tell you about a situation that drove this home for me. I was at a young startup managing a portfolio of enterprise cybersecurity customers. Complex deployments, 24/7 monitoring, executive stakeholders, the works. And we were growing fast, really fast, which meant that we were hiring CSMs constantly. And every time we brought someone new onto the team, they'd show up on day one with a laptop, a welcome email, and a list of accounts. No context, no process documentation, no framework for how we approach customer success. Just a name, a logo, and maybe a Salesforce record that was, could be 6 months out of date. So they came to me and the other senior CSMs, and we spent hours explaining things that we'd already explained to the last 3 hires. How do we run kickoff calls? What's our onboarding timeline? What does a healthy account look like? What do we do when a customer escalates? Where do we log risk? How do we track expansion opportunities? Now, every question was absolutely legitimate. Every question took time. And every question pulled us away from our actual accounts. It wasn't sustainable. And it wasn't fair to the new hires either. They wanted to do good work. They just didn't have the tools. So I built them. I created an onboarding deck that walked through our entire approach. A set of runbooks that documented our most common workflows. A health scorecard framework that gave everyone a consistent way to assess accounts, and a risk log template that made it impossible to lose track of customer issues. Now, none of it was fancy. None of it required approval from leadership. I just built it because it needed to exist. And here's what happened. The next CSM we hired was productive in about half the time. They had clarity, they had process, they had confidence, and I didn't spend 3 weeks answering the same questions over and over. Within 6 months of implementing that framework, our new CSM ramp time dropped from about 12 weeks down to about 6. We scaled from 8 CSMs to 15 without adding management overhead. And our team retention improved because people weren't drowning in ambiguity during their first 90 days. That's the power of documentation. Now, it's not sexy. It's not the kind of thing you put on your LinkedIn. But it's a difference between a CS team that scales and one that collapses under its own weight. Before I break down what actually goes into a playbook, let me give you a specific example of why this matters. I had an account at Palo Alto Networks, huge retail customer, 450,000 in ARR. They'd gone silent. Their original champion had left the company. Renewal was about 75 days out. And internally, everyone assumed it was dead. Here's what I found out when I diagnosed it. Their adoption had stalled at 40%. The new IT director didn't know why they'd bought the product in the first place. And no one on our side had documented the original business case or their success criteria. We had CRM notes that said, "Great kickoff call," and "Customers engaged." And that was it. So I did 3 things. First, I rebuilt the context. I pulled the original sales notes. I found the security audit that drove the original purchase and identified the compliance deadline that they were trying to hit. Then I scheduled a call with the new IT director, and I opened up with, "Here's why your predecessor bought this. Here's what you committed to achieve, and here's where we are today." That conversation reset the relationship because I knew their business better than they remembered. Second, I installed structure that they didn't have. I created a 30-day action plan with specific milestones. Week 1, complete the integration that their team had stalled on. Week 2, train the end users who had never been onboarded. Week 3, run a security posture report showing measurable improvement. Week 4, executive business review showing compliance progress. Third, I drove measurable movement. Within 30 days, adoption jumped from 40% to 78%. The IT director became an internal advocate. And at the EBR, their CISO said, "This is exactly what we needed. Let's talk about expanding to the other business units." We renewed at 450,000. We expanded to 680,000 6 months later. And that account became a reference customer. That didn't happen because I brought a positive mindset or built trust. It happened because I had a repeatable system for diagnosing what broke and installing the structure that the customer didn't have, and then driving visible progress in a defined window. Most CSMs would have accepted that the account was just lost. I removed the chaos that was killing it. And the only reason I could execute that play was because I had documentation. I had a runbook for how to handle post-champion departure situations. I had a health scorecard that told me exactly where adoption had failed. I had a risk log that tracked every gap. And I had an account recovery template that I could deploy in 48 hours. That's what this episode is about, not philosophy, mechanics. So let's talk about what actually goes into an internal CS playbook. And I'm going to break this down into 4 components that every CS organization needs, whether you're a team of 1 or a team of 50. First, the onboarding deck. This is your new hires roadmap for their first 90 days. And it needs to do more than just welcome them to the company. It needs to set expectations. It needs to explain your methodology and give them a clear picture of what success looks like in this role. Here's what I included when I built ours at that startup. Slide 1 was the mission. What does customer success mean at this company? Not the generic definition, the specific version. For us, it was ensuring customers achieved measurable security outcomes while building long-term partnerships that drove retention and expansion. That's what we optimized for. Everything else flowed from that. Slide 2 was the team structure. Who's on the CS team? What are their roles? And who are your key cross-functional partners? Slide 3 was the customer journey. From post-sale handoff to onboarding, to adoption, to renewal, to expansion. Every phase gets a name, a timeline, and a clear outcome. Because if your new hire doesn't understand how customers move through your process, they'll never know where they should be focusing at any given time. Slide 4 was the tools and the systems. What's your CRM? What's your CS platform? Where do you track your tasks? Where do you log your notes? Where do you access customer data? Slide 5 was key metrics. What are we measuring? Retention rate, net revenue retention, health scores, expansion revenue, support ticket volume. Make it clear what leadership cares about and how individual CSMs contribute to those numbers. Slide 6 was the first 30, 60, 90 plan. What should a new CSM accomplish in their first month? Shadow customer calls, complete product training, review account handoff documentation, learn the escalation process. And then month 2, take ownership of 5 accounts. Run your first QBR. Month 3, full portfolio ownership. First renewal cycle. First expansion conversation. This gave new hires a clear trajectory. They knew what was expected and when. And it gave managers a framework for evaluating progress. That onboarding deck became the foundation for everything else, because once someone understood the why and the what, then we could teach them the how, which brings me to the second component, runbooks. Runbooks are step-by-step process documents that capture how you actually do the work. And every CS team needs at least 3. The first runbook is the account handoff process. When a deal closes and moves from sales to CS, what happens? Who schedules the kickoff call? Who sends the welcome email? Who gathers the technical requirements? Who creates the project plan? At Palo Alto Networks, I documented this down to the template level because handoffs were where deals died. If we didn't nail the transition, the customer felt it immediately, and they started questioning whether they made the right decision. So I built a runbook that said, Within 24 hours of close, the assigned CSM reviews the sales notes and schedules a kickoff within 5 business days. Before that call, they prepare a success plan template pre-filled with the customer's stated goals. During the call, they establish communication cadence, confirm timeline expectations, and set the first milestone. After the call, they send a written recap with action items and owners. That's the process. Every time. No exceptions. The second runbook is the escalation workflow. What do you do when a customer's upset? When do you involve your manager? When do you pull in product or engineering? When do you escalate to the executives? This runbook needs to be specific because escalations are where things go sideways fast. At CoFence, I created a tiered escalation model. Tier 1 was CSM owned. If I could resolve it with existing resources and it didn't threaten the renewal, I just handled it. Tier 2 was manager involvement. If the issue required cross-functional coordination or executive communication, then my manager joined. Tier 3 was executive escalation. If the customer was threatening to churn or had escalated to Rohit, our CEO, then we activated the full response team. Every tier had a defined timeline. It had a communication protocol and a documentation requirement. The third runbook is the renewal preparation process. How do you prepare for a renewal conversation? When do you start? What data do you gather? Who needs to be involved? At Swimlane, I built a 90-day renewal prep process. Day 90 before renewal, CSM reviews the account health, usage data, and the stakeholder sentiment. Day 75, CSM schedules renewal planning call with sales. Day 60, the CSM delivers internal renewal forecast with the risk assessment. Day 45, CSM schedules executive business review with the customer. Day 30, sales presents renewal terms. Day 15, CSM follows up on any open concerns. And on the day of renewal, the contract signed or the extension is negotiated. That runbook turned renewals from reactive scrambles into systematic campaigns. And it worked because everyone knew what to do and when. Now, I want to be clear about something. I'm not saying you always need to build from scratch. At Swimlane, they already had a renewal process when I joined. I didn't throw it out and rebuild it. I used it. I learned it. And after running through 2 renewal cycles, I identified specific gaps where accounts were just slipping through. The process didn't account for technical escalations in the final 30 days. It didn't have a clear handoff protocol when sales needed to negotiate terms. So I proposed targeted improvements. I got buy-in from the team and our VP, and we refined the existing process together. That's often the smarter play. Don't rebuild what's working. Just make it better. These runbooks, they don't need to be perfect. They just need to exist, because the alternative is institutional knowledge that lives in someone's head and disappears the moment they leave the company. The third component is the health scorecard. Now, this is your framework for assessing whether a customer is thriving, whether they're stable, or if they're at risk. And it needs to be consistent, across your entire portfolio. Here's the thing about health scores. Most CSMs will calculate one for you automatically based on product usage and support tickets and login frequency, and that's fine. But it's not enough, because health isn't just usage. It's sentiment. It's stakeholder engagement. It's whether they're achieving their stated goals. It's whether they're advocating internally for your product or quietly building a case to replace you. So when I build health scorecards, I used a manual framework that captured 5 dimensions. Product adoption. Are they using the features that they bought correctly? Are they expanding usage, or are they contracting? Business outcomes. Are they achieving the results they told us that they wanted? This is where you need to document success metrics at the very beginning of the relationship. Stakeholder engagement. How many people at the customer are actively involved? Are we talking to the economic buyer or just the day-to-day user? Are we building relationships across departments or siloed in just one team? At Ernst & Young, I had 8 active stakeholders across 4 different service lines. That's high engagement. That's strategic. That's green. Sentiment. How do they feel about us? Are they responsive, enthusiastic, referring us internally? Or are they short on emails? Are they canceling calls? Are they complaining to support? Then risk factors, technical issues, open escalations, budget concerns, competitive threats. Is there stakeholder turnover? If yes to any of those, then that account isn't green, even if usage is high. Every account got scored on those 5 dimensions, green, yellow, or red. And the composite score determined our engagement strategy. Green accounts got strategic treatment, quarterly business reviews, expansion conversations, executive introductions. We invested in growth. Yellow accounts got stabilization, more frequent check-ins, proactive issue resolution. We made sure that nothing slipped through. Now, red accounts got intensive intervention, get well plans, cross-functional alignment, executive engagement. We pulled out all the stops. And here's what made this work. Everyone used the same scorecard. So when we reviewed accounts in team meetings, we were all speaking the same language. No one had to explain their own methodology. We all knew what green meant. Within 2 quarters of implementing this scorecard across the team, our early warning system helped us identify and save 4 at-risk renewals worth $280,000 in ARR. We caught the warning signs early because we were all looking at the same indicators. The 4th component that you need is the risk log. This is the document that saves you when everything goes wrong. And if you're not maintaining one, you're flying blind. Here's what a risk log captures. Every issue, every escalation, every concern, every red flag, documented, time-stamped with clear owners and resolution plans. With one company, I managed a complex deployment across multiple locations, and issues came up constantly. Technical bugs, integration challenges, stakeholder disagreements, budget questions. And if I didn't track them systematically, things would have fallen through the cracks. So I built a risk log with 6 columns. The first 3 were straightforward. Risk description needs to be specific. Customer unhappy isn't helpful. Customer CISO escalated due to 3-week delay in integration with existing SIM platform. That's helpful. Severity tells you priority. Critical, high, medium, or low. Owner is who's responsible for driving the resolution. Now the next 3 columns are where the log becomes powerful. Status tells you where things stand. Open, in progress, blocked, or resolved. The target resolution date is when we expect this to be fixed. And if we miss that date, we escalate. Actions taken creates a paper trail. When you're 3 months into a crisis and someone asks, why didn't we catch this earlier? You can point to the log and say, we did, and here's what we did about it. I updated this log weekly, and I shared it with my manager, with sales, and with the customer's executive sponsor, because transparency builds trust. And they could see that we were tracking every issue and driving toward resolution. When we did that, they stayed engaged. The risk log also became my CYA document. When leadership asked why a renewal was at risk, I didn't have to reconstruct the story from memory. I had a time-stamped record of every escalation, of every action, of every delay. And that mattered because it protected me from blame when things went sideways through no fault of my own. Now, here's what most CSMs get wrong about documentation. They think it's admin work, something you do when you have extra time, a nice to have that gets deprioritized when things get busy. And that's backwards. Documentation isn't what you do after you handle the crisis. Documentation is what prevents the crisis in the first place. Most CSMs operate reactively. A customer escalates, so they scramble. A champion leaves, so they panic. A renewal comes up in 30 days, so they throw together a last-minute pitch. That's not customer success. That's crisis management. The difference between a reactive CSM and someone who actually scales impact is systems. Reactive CSMs respond to problems as they surface. They're always one step behind. They spend their time putting out fires instead of preventing them. CSMs with systems see problems 90 days, 120 days before they become critical. They have early warning indicators. They have documented playbooks for common failure modes. They have templates that they can deploy in 48 hours instead of building one from scratch every time. With one customer, I managed a deployment that hit a major technical roadblock 6 weeks in. Their internal security team flagged an integration issue that could have delayed go live by about 3 months. Most CSMs would have escalated it and hoped that engineering would just fix it quickly. I didn't do that. I had a runbook for technical escalations. I knew exactly who to involve, what information they needed, and what the communication protocol was. I had a risk log that already documented the technical dependencies, so I didn't have to reconstruct the context. And I had a stakeholder map that told me which executive to brief so that they could apply internal pressure on their security team. Within 72 hours, we had a resolution path. Within 2 weeks, the issue was closed, and the deployment went live on schedule. That didn't happen because I worked harder. It happened because I had the systems that let me move faster and with more precision than the chaos around me. That's the real difference. Reactive CSMs, they live in the weeds. CSMs with systems create the infrastructure that makes the weeds manageable. Now let's talk about who actually builds this stuff. Because here's the reality. Most CS leaders won't hand you a fully built playbook. They'll say it's important, they'll add it to the roadmap, they'll talk about it in team meetings, but if you're waiting for someone else to build it, you'll be waiting forever. So you build it yourself. Not because it's your job, but because you need it. I didn't ask for permission to create that onboarding deck. I just did it. And when the next new hire showed up and was productive faster, my manager asked how. I showed them the deck, and suddenly that became the standard. I didn't ask permission to build the health scorecard framework. I needed a consistent way to evaluate my accounts, so I just created one. And when other CSMs saw it and said, "Hey, can I use that?" I shared it. And it spread. But here's the key. I didn't just drop a document in Slack and declare victory. I walked teammates through it. I asked for feedback. I adjusted based on how they actually worked. At Palo Alto Networks, when I was mentoring those 7 CSMs, we refined our runbooks together. Someone would say, this step doesn't really make sense for our enterprise accounts. And we'd revise it. That collaborative refinement made the documentation stronger, and it also ensured that people actually used it. That's how change happens in CS. You don't wait for top-down mandates. You build what you need, you prove it works, and you share it. But here's the other side of that. Once you've built these tools, you need to maintain them. Because playbooks that sit in a Google Drive and never get updated are useless. At Palo Alto Networks, I mentored those 7 CSMs during our manager's extended leave. And one of the things I insisted on was that we kept our documentation current. Every time we changed a process, we would update the runbook. Every time we added a new tool, we updated the onboarding deck. Every time we refined our health scoring methodology, we would update the scorecard. Because if the documentation doesn't reflect reality, people are going to stop using it. And then you're back to institutional knowledge that just lives in people's heads. So here's my challenge to you. If you're a solo CSM, start small. Build the onboarding doc that you wish that you'd had. Even if it's just for you. Even if you're the only person who will ever read it. Because 6 months from now, when someone asks how you do what you do, you'll have an answer. If you're on a CS team, look around. What's missing? What do new hires struggle with? What questions come up over and over? Build the thing that solves that. And then share it. And if you're a CS leader, make space for this work. Give your team time to document. Celebrate the people who build these tools and make it clear that this work matters just as much as closing renewals. Because the truth is, you can't scale customer success without infrastructure. You can't hire your way out of chaos. And you can't expect people to figure it out on their own. You need systems. You need documentation. You need playbooks. And if no one's building them, you need to build them yourself. Now, if you want templates for these, I've got them. The onboarding deck framework, the runbook template, the health scorecard, and the risk log are all part of the resources available at clearpathcx.com. They're designed to give you a head start so that you're not building from scratch. In the next episode, we're shifting gears a little. We're going to talk about building your personal CS brand without being obnoxious about it. How to be respected without being loud. How to get credit for your work without coming across like you're campaigning for promotion. How to position yourself as someone who knows what they're doing without turning into one of those LinkedIn thought leaders who posts inspirational quotes over stock photos. Because visibility matters, but authenticity matters more. Until then, here's what I'd love you to do. Open your share drive. Look at what documentation you have and ask yourself, if I left tomorrow, could someone pick up my accounts and know what to do? And if the answer is no, start writing. So follow the show on your favorite platform. Visit clearpathcx.com for templates as well as other resources, and connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/in/Mark Bernardin. If this episode made you think about the structure that you wish you had, drop me a message. I read every one. Thank you for being here. Thank you for doing this work. And thank you for showing up and delivering every single day. I'll talk to you soon.